My stepson mocked me during his birthday dinner, told everyone I was just the guy who paid for things. So I stood up, left my card with the waiter for my half, and walked out while they sang happy birthday without a cake. We were seated at a long table in a Manhattan restaurant. Steel and glass, white tablecloths, soft jazz humming like a lie in the background. One of those places where the lighting is low enough to hide the cost. Owen had just turned 18. He was laughing, loose-shouldered, relaxed in a way only the center of attention ever learns to be. Friends flanked him, boys from school, a girl from econ, a junior varsity teammate I didn't recognize. Jade sat near the end, her eyes glued to her phone. Kara, my wife, smiled politely, her hand resting on the back of Owen's chair. They looked like a family. Then Owen raised his glass. To friends, he said. To Mom and, of course, to Greg. He paused just long enough for his voice to tighten with irony. He's the one who paid for all of this. Laughter followed. A few genuine chuckles, one or two snorts. Even Jade cracked a grin. And Kara? She looked down into her wine like it had something interesting to say. I stood up, quietly, reached for my card and handed it to the waiter. Split the bill, I said, calm as a man slipping out of his own life. I'll pay for my half. And I left. No anger, no grand gesture. Just turned and walked out, the birthday cake tucked neatly under my arm. They sang happy birthday without me, and without dessert. That's the night I finally knew my place. My name is Greg. I'm 45. I met Kara at a charity gala in San Diego. It was one of those events that smells like perfume and wealth. Auction paddles, soft lighting, wine poured by the gallon. She was magnetic, confident, laughed like someone who'd taught herself how to laugh again. She had 2 children already, Owen and Jade. Their father, Ryan, had long since disappeared. No phone calls, no visits, no money, just a name and a few old photos shoved in a drawer. I didn't come in to replace him. I just wanted to belong. We moved into a house in the suburbs. I bought it, a 4-bedroom with a backyard and good schools nearby. I started picking Owen up from wrestling practice, driving Jade to violin lessons, helping with algebra I barely remembered how to solve. I paid for dental work, orthodontics, physical therapy, SAT tutors, vacations, gifts, lunches, gas. I kept telling myself, this is how you build a family. Slowly, brick by brick. And for a while I thought Owen saw me. Not as a father, maybe, but as something solid. Something permanent. I was wrong. You can see it in their eyes, long before you hear the words. The disinterest. The practiced indifference. Owen would nod when I spoke, mutter cool. But his gaze would slide away like I wasn't real. Jade? She had this way of existing next to me without ever acknowledging I was there. Like I was a shadow. Like I was furniture. But I held on. Kept thinking, give it time. Kids need space. Teenagers lash out. They don't say thank you, not until they're older. I told myself these lies every day. Told myself the love would catch up to the labor. I remember our first Christmas together. I bought Owen a leather jacket he'd been admiring. Jade got a brand new iPad. Kara hugged me afterward and said, you really didn't have to do all that. But she didn't stop me either. No one ever stopped me. I kept paying, kept showing up, kept hoping. Once, when Owen was 12, he crashed his bike and scraped his knee. Kara wasn't home. I cleaned the cut, dabbed peroxide, wrapped the bandage. He winced and said, thanks, Greg. Not Dad, just Greg. Neutral, cold. He never called me anything else. Sometimes I'd lie awake imagining him calling me Dad. Just once. Maybe by accident. Maybe in a rush. I would have held onto that like oxygen. Instead, I got, you're not my real dad. Mom will decide. Ryan used to. Ryan. The man who vanished. The man who defaulted. The man whose absence was somehow always preferable to my presence. There was a project Owen brought home in middle school, a family tree. I stood at the kitchen island while he filled it out. He showed it to Kara, laughing. I even added Dad's guitar to his box. No branch for me. No mention. No line. Just a blank space where I stood every day. Kara didn't say a word. That became her rhythm. Silence when she should have spoken. Shrugs when I needed a stance. Reassurances whispered too late to matter. They're just kids, she'd say. They don't mean anything by it. They'll come around. They didn't. Every year I paid more. Every year I mattered less. That dinner in Manhattan wasn't a breaking point. It was a mirror. A moment that showed me what had always been there. I was the one who paid. Not the one they thanked. Not the one they included. Just the one who made things possible so they could pretend someone else was responsible. And Kara let it happen. There's a quiet humiliation in walking out of a restaurant alone. You notice things you usually don't. The tightness in your shoes, the way your coat swings wrong when you're angry, the weight of a birthday cake in a box you regret buying. The cold hits different when you realize you're not walking away from a dinner, you're walking out of your own life. I walked for an hour, through the city, past lit windows full of strangers who probably belonged to each other. I wondered how many men had done what I'd done, paid, built, stayed, and were still invisible in their own homes. When I finally got home, the house was dark. I set the cake on the counter, took off my coat, walked into the office, sat down at my desk, opened my laptop. I pulled up 7 years of bills, 7 years of wire transfers, 7 years of me buying love that was never on sale. And I made a decision. But that part comes later. This part, this is just the fracture, the splinter beneath the skin, the smile before it breaks. This is the night I finally knew my place. Not father, not partner, wallet, placeholder, ghost. So tell me this. Would you have stayed to sing happy birthday? It starts slow, like rot behind drywall. Small comments. A laugh that lingers too long. A door that closes just a little too hard. It doesn't come all at once, the rejection. It arrives in fragments. Easy to ignore at first. You're not my dad. That was the first one. Owen said it one morning when I told him to take his muddy cleats off before stepping on the carpet. Simple request. Firm tone. And that was his reply. No eye contact. Just the words, flat and effortless. You're not my dad. I remember standing there, holding a bag of groceries, rain dripping from the collar of my coat. I should have said something, should have laid down a boundary. But instead I let it slide. Told myself he was tired, frustrated. Teenagers say things. They don't mean them, but they do, especially when they say it again. The next time it was over the thermostat. He cranked it to 75 in the middle of July. I told him to stop, that we didn't live in a hotel. And again, you're not my dad. It became his shield, his license, his get out of responsibility free card. And Jade? She didn't say it, not aloud. But she didn't have to. Her silence said it louder. The way she'd glance at Kara before answering any question I asked. The way she'd reply to my instructions with, "I'll check with Mom." I was a ghost living in the house I paid for. Still I stayed. Still I tried. When Owen graduated, I bought him a used Mustang. Cherry red. Low mileage. Detailed it myself the morning we surprised him. He smiled, said thanks, took the keys, drove off without looking back. That night, Kara kissed me and said, "You're too good to him." But her voice lacked conviction. Like she knew it too. Like she didn't believe her own words anymore. I paid for his first year of college in full. Out of pocket. No loans. No hesitation. Kara was hesitant only briefly. "Shouldn't we ask him to contribute?" she said once. And then, after a long pause, "Or at least his father?" His father, Ryan. The man who hadn't been seen since Jade's 9th birthday. The man who sent a card once with no return address and a Target gift card that had already been used. No, Ryan wouldn't pay. He never did. He existed only in stories and excuses. But me, I always paid. And not just for Owen. Jade got into a national arts competition in Boston. Round-trip airfare, hotel, supplies, entry fees. I paid it all. I took time off work to be there. Sat in the second row. Applauded so hard my hands ached. Afterwards, she posted a photo online. Captioned it, "Thanks, Mom." I wasn't even tagged. There's a kind of quiet that follows those moments. A silence that isn't absence, but punishment. I didn't mention the caption. Didn't ask for credit. What would be the point? It wouldn't change what she believed. What they all believed. I was convenient. Not real. When Kara and I finally got married, I thought maybe things would change. A wedding. A home. A legal bond. I wore the suit. Paid for the flowers. Stood at the altar and said vows I meant. They didn't. The next morning, I found Owen in the kitchen. He was pouring cereal, scrolling his phone, still in the wrinkled dress shirt from the night before. "Morning," I said. He didn't look up. "You're not part of this family," he said, as casually as if he were commenting on the weather. "You just live here and pay for things." He said it like it was fact, like he was doing me the favor of saying it aloud. I didn't answer. I just stood there. Something cracked inside me. Not loudly, not violently. Just a fissure somewhere deep. I kept walking past him. Walked out the door. Sat in the car with the engine off and stared at the windshield for 23 minutes. That's when the counting started. Not the literal counting, though that came later, but the mental tally, the emotional spreadsheet. Every ignored dinner, every slight, every time I was referred to by my first name instead of a title that implied meaning. It added up. I started noticing everything. The way Kara would say, "We'll ask the kids," before making a decision. The way Owen rolled his eyes whenever I gave an opinion. The way Jade once told her friend on the phone, "Mom's husband? Yeah, he's around. But who even counts him?" I was being erased in real time. And yet, my name was on every utility bill. My signature on every tuition payment. My hands built their lives, and they lived as if I were just part of the wallpaper. Over 5 years, I poured in over $300,000. Tuition, healthcare, groceries, rent, streaming services, car insurance, birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, everything. No thank you, no acknowledgement, no respect. I once brought up the money to Kara, not as a complaint, just as a conversation. I mentioned how tight things were getting, how the mortgage might need to be refinanced again. She nodded and said, "We've always managed," as if this was shared, as if the weight didn't sit almost entirely on my back. I should have stopped then, but I didn't, because I was still waiting for something that would never come. There was one night, months before the birthday dinner, when Owen came home drunk, reeking of beer and vomit. He stumbled in around 2 a.m. I helped him to the bathroom, cleaned him up, put him to bed, sat by his side for an hour, making sure he didn't choke in his sleep. In the morning, he didn't say a word, didn't remember, or didn't care. Kara said, "Thanks for taking care of him," and kissed my cheek. I just nodded. But I remember thinking, why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep standing in a place I'm not allowed to claim? Because I loved them. That's the ugly part. That's the part one don't want to admit. I loved Owen. Loved Jade. Loved them enough to think maybe one day I'd be more than tolerated. But that hope became a sickness. A delusion. Something I fed with money and silence. Until the night in Manhattan. That was the tipping point. The final push off the ledge I'd been standing on for years. They say betrayal hurts most when it comes from those closest to you. But for me, it wasn't betrayal. It was confirmation. A truth finally spoken aloud. You just live here and pay for things. So that's what I became. A man who paid. A man who stayed. A man who hoped. Until the cost became unbearable. And even then, I didn't leave. Not right away. Instead, I started pulling the receipts. Started building a case. Not against them, but for myself. Proof that I had given. That I had tried. That I had loved in ways that left scars. But the final decision, that came later. For now, this was the weight. And every cruel word just made it heavier. So tell me, at what point does silence become complicity? At what point does love become self-erasure? And how long would you have lasted? If you were me. The morning after Owen's birthday dinner, I woke early. Not because of an alarm, but because silence had weight now. Pressed against my chest the way grief does. Constant, invisible, and impossible to ignore. I sat at the kitchen table, fingers wrapped around a coffee mug I hadn't filled. The birthday cake still sat on the counter, untouched, like evidence from a crime scene. Kara hadn't come home that night. Neither had the kids. They stayed in the city, celebrating. I didn't call, didn't text. I just sat there with the silence and my decision. There's a drawer in the office I used to call just in case. That morning I opened it, pulled out a box of files, bank statements, tuition invoices, car payments, dental receipts, phone bills. 7 years of evidence. A full archive of who I'd been to them. Not husband, not father, financier. That afternoon I made calls. To Owen's college, to Jade's club, to the insurance provider. I didn't yell, didn't even sound upset. I just said the same line over and over. I will no longer be responsible for this account. Please remove me. Some paused. Some asked if everything was okay. I said it was fine. Just a change in circumstance. By sunset, the Wi-Fi was down. The streaming services wouldn't load. Jade's international trip funding was gone. Owen's next tuition installment? Cancelled. At 6:47 p.m. I handed Kara a folder. Inside, spreadsheets, receipts, a notarized letter. I'm leaving, I said. She blinked, said nothing, just opened the folder like it might bite her. You can buy out my share of the house, I said, or sell it. I don't care anymore. Either way, I'm out. She didn't argue. Not yet. Maybe she didn't believe me. Maybe she thought this was another performance. A man posturing for effect. But I wasn't posturing. I was escaping. That night, I moved into a rented apartment near the coast. 1 bedroom. No yard. No photos on the walls. Just quiet. Real quiet. Not the suffocating silence of a house that hates you. Just the absence of noise. And for the first time in years, I breathed. But peace never arrives clean. It always drags the past behind it. The text started the next day. Owen. This is insane. Come back. We didn't mean it like that. Jade sent an email. Said she was sorry. That she didn't realize how much I did. As if $300,000 could slip anyone's mind. Kara called. I didn't answer. She left voicemails. Her voice shaking between apology and outrage. One message said, "You mattered. I was just trying to keep things stable." Another said, "I can't believe you'd abandon us over a joke." A joke. That's what she called it. The toast. The laughter. The years of passive disdain. A joke. I started ignoring them all. Not out of cruelty. Out of necessity. Because once you stop paying for a lie, you realize how expensive the truth really is. They had built their lives on me. I was the hidden foundation never acknowledged but always relied on. And when that foundation cracked, the whole house shifted. Kara begged for meetings, for family therapy, for a reset. I refused. Owen tried guilt. You raised me, he said. You don't get to walk away just because you're hurt. I replied once. Just once. I didn't walk away because I was hurt. I walked away because I finally understood I was never inside to begin with. He didn't reply. 2 weeks later, I got a message from Jade. Said her coach was asking about her travel plans. That she didn't know what to tell him. I almost replied. Almost. But then I remembered her voice. That night I overheard her on the phone. Mom's husband? Yeah, he's around. But who even counts him? And so I didn't reply. Not out of malice. Out of clarity. Because that's what happens when the mask cracks. You stop making excuses. You stop pretending they didn't mean it. You stop hoping they'll wake up one day and see you. They saw me just fine. They just never valued what they saw. In the weeks that followed, I watched the unraveling from a distance. Owen's college threatened expulsion unless payments resumed. Kara tried to get a loan in her name. Denied. Jade missed 2 deadlines for her competition. No one offered to cover the fees. The house went on the market. Slowly. Desperately. Kara listed it below value. The mortgage was still half mine, but I let it go. Let it all go. Every towel I folded. Every dinner I cooked. Every ride to school. Every late-night pickup from parties they didn't invite me to. Gone. And still, part of me waited for someone to show up at my door. Not with anger, not with begging, but with truth. Just once, I wanted to hear, "We failed you." It never came. What did come were short texts. Neutral. Lifeless. House sold. College delayed. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer, because I had nothing left to give. I started running every morning. Along the coast. Past strangers who didn't know me, didn't expect anything. I'd watch the sun rise over the water, feel the cold air in my lungs, and think, this is what life feels like when you stop financing your own erasure. And in that quiet, something hardened in me. Not bitterness, not revenge, just resolve. A year later, I saw them again. At the airport, I was flying out to visit my sister. They were arriving, Kara and Jade, alone, luggage dragging behind them like regret. Kara looked older, Jade, thinner, tired. We locked eyes for 1 second. She opened her mouth. I shook my head. She closed it. We walked past each other. No words, no closure, just gravity. Owen wasn't with them. Later, I found out he'd dropped out. That Ryan, the mythic father, had surfaced just long enough to promise help, then vanished again. History repeating, as it always does. And I moved on, rented a new place, met someone. Her name is Amy. No kids, no ghosts, just a woman who looks at me and sees me, not for what I provide, not for what I can fix, just me. Sometimes she asks why I flinch at certain words, why I get quiet around holidays. I haven't told her the whole story, not yet, because part of me still aches. Not for them, for the man I used to be, the one who believed effort meant love, that paying meant belonging, that sacrifice guaranteed respect. He's gone now, buried under credit card statements and broken promises. But sometimes late at night I think about the house, about the way Owen used to laugh before he hardened, about Jade's violin which hasn't been touched in years, about Kara's eyes that once looked at me like I was salvation. And I wonder if they ever sit together and ask themselves where it all went wrong. I know the answer. It went wrong the moment they decided I was just the man who paid for everything. So I stopped paying. Tell me, would you have done the same? Or would you still be sitting at that kitchen table, waiting for love to cash the checks respect never wrote? A year is a strange measurement. Long enough to change everything. Short enough to remember it all. In the year after I left, the silence in my life grew roots. Not loneliness, something different. Something better. Solitude. The kind that lets you finally hear your own thoughts. I used to live on edge, waiting for someone to call me Greg with that tone. Flat, distant, dutiful. Now I wake to stillness, and it doesn't demand anything from me. It's been 13 months since the last voicemail from Kara. I still have it saved. Not because it meant anything, but because it marked the moment she finally stopped pretending I was coming back. Greg, I just thought maybe that's how it started. Her voice cracked, then the line went quiet. She never finished the sentence. That's all any of them ever gave me in the end. Unfinished thoughts, half promises, apologies dressed up like explanations. There was no reckoning, no real apology, just fragments. But I kept every piece. Not as vengeance, as proof. Proof that I had done what no one else would. I stopped lying to myself. They didn't collapse all at once. It happened gradually. Owen never went back to school. Couldn't afford it. The university dropped him after he missed tuition for 2 consecutive semesters. Last I heard, he moved in with friends out in Jersey working at a gym. Ryan, their real father, promised to help. He wired money once, then stopped answering again. Somewhere, deep in Owen's chest, that must have echoed. That call never returned. That money that never came. The realization that the man he defended wasn't the man who stayed. Jade quit her competitions. Said she didn't have time, but I know the truth. The sponsorships fell through. The travel fund I used to manage vanished. She went from violinist to barista in 6 months. I don't say that with malice. I say it because she built her art on someone else's labor and forgot who was holding the ladder. Kara sold the house 6 weeks after I left. She tried to buy me out first. Offered me half of what it was worth. I didn't even argue. Just sent her the deed and let it go. I knew she couldn't keep up with the payments alone. Neither could Ryan. I'm sure she had to explain that to the kids eventually, that the roof over their heads had always rested on someone they refused to acknowledge. That's the thing about pulling out a cornerstone. The whole structure doesn't fall at once. It leans, cracks, then the walls buckle. And me? I moved to Oregon. Quiet town, coastal air. The kind of place where no one knows your history and no one asks why your wedding ring is in a drawer. I met Amy at a bookstore. She was standing in the aisle reading the back of a novel I already owned. I told her not to waste her time with it. We argued for 10 minutes. She bought it anyway. That's how it started. She doesn't know the full story. Not yet. Bits and pieces. She knows I was married before. That I helped raise 2 kids. That I left after realizing I was never truly part of the life I'd spent years building. She's never pried. That's something I never experienced with Kara. With her, silence always came with suspicion. With Amy, it comes with trust. She doesn't flinch when I get quiet. Doesn't ask what I'm thinking when I stare too long at nothing. She just waits. Patient. Still. Safe. Some nights we sit on the porch and watch the fog roll in over the cliffs. I drink tea now, not bourbon. I go to bed without the weight of someone else's resentment pressed against my spine. And sometimes, only sometimes, I allow myself to remember. The day I packed my bags, Jade asked me if I was really leaving. "You're just giving up?" she said. I looked at her, really looked, and said, "No, I gave everything, and I'm finally done." She didn't argue, because she knew. Deep down, they all knew. There was nothing left to take. I don't miss them. I miss the version of myself who still believed I could matter in their world. That man was willing to split himself into 1,000 pieces for a family that never once tried to put him back together. He was generous, hopeful. He's dead now. In his place is someone harder, colder, but honest. I walk differently now, straighter, not because the burden is lighter, but because I finally stopped carrying it for people who refused to lift anything in return. The last time I saw any of them was at the airport, Portland International. I was flying out to see Amy's parents. Kara was arriving with Jade. I recognized the way they moved together. Too quiet, too close, like people trying not to fall apart in public. Kara saw me first. Her eyes widened. Jade noticed a second later. We didn't speak. Just passed like strangers with familiar faces. She opened her mouth. Maybe to apologize. Maybe to lie again. I didn't let her. I kept walking. And she let me. That was the real ending. Not the dinner. Not the departure. The airport. 2 paths. No overlap. Amy met me at the gate. Hugged me like I was the only person in the world she was waiting for. I felt more seen in that single moment than in all 7 years I lived in that house. It's funny how fast things unravel when the illusion dies. All those years I thought I was the problem. That I wasn't trying hard enough. That I needed to be more patient, more understanding, more forgiving. Turns out I was just in the wrong story, playing the wrong role, feeding people who only open their mouths to take, never to thank. Do I sound bitter? Maybe. But bitterness is just grief with clarity. I don't wish them harm. I don't hope for revenge. I just hope they remember. Remember the man who fixed the car when it broke down at midnight. The man who stayed up late to help with homework. The man who didn't walk away until he'd been pushed to the edge of himself. And when they do remember, when they sit in the quiet of a rented apartment or wait for a call from a father who never answers, I hope they realize what they lost. Not because I need them to, but because they need to. Every story needs a reckoning. This is mine. And if they ever find this, if they ever read these words, I want them to know, I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I finally loved myself more. Now I live in a house where I am not a ghost. I eat dinner with someone who looks at me like I matter. I am not a step anything anymore. I'm just a man who finally learned that love without respect is servitude. And I stopped serving. So let me ask you now, who do you feel sorry for? Them? Or the man who finally said no, after spending years saying yes to people who never said thank you? Tell me, was I wrong to walk away before the cake was cut? Or was I just the last one to realize I was never invited to the table in the first place?